All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are currently in Unit 6. We are about half-ish of the way through. So in the last couple of class periods, we have been talking about the judicial branch and the court system itself. We've gone over jurisdiction. We've gone over kind of an intro to the court system, what the qualifications are for state and federal judges, that kind of thing. And we've talked about the federal court system. So now we're going to hop down a level in our little upside down funnel of federalism, and we're going to talk about state courts. So there are a lot of things that the federal and state courts have in common. So you got to make sure that when you're looking at your quiz and your test, you're looking at whether or not we're talking about the state or the federal level of a court system. Additionally, there are a few key things that the state courts do differently. So we got to make sure that we figure that out today. All right, so first we're going to look at the North Carolina Constitution in Article 4 because the U.S. and the NC Constitutions do not line up article for article. They are different. So in the U.S., Article 3 sets up the judicial branch, but in the NC Constitution, Article 4 sets up the judicial branch. So they're a little different. So let's read through and let's see what we got here and how we set up the court system in North Carolina. So justices of the Supreme Court, shall hold office for the terms of 8 years. So we talked about that already. And until their successors, the people who come after them, are elected and qualified. Justices of the Supreme Court and judges of the Court of Appeals shall be elected by the qualified voters of the state. The Supreme Court, here's the key sentence, shall consist of a Chief Justice and 6 Associate Justices. So currently, the North Carolina Supreme Court has 7 total justices because you have 1 Chief and 6 Associate. 1 plus 6 equals 7. All right, so who elects NC judges? The people. They serve for 8 years, and how many people are on there? That would be 7. Okay, so let's make sure that you label this on your note sheet: Supreme Appeals, Superior, and District. Please notice that one of these layers is not like the other in the federal court system, in the SAD cake. So please tell me which one this is because you have a question coming up. All right, so hopefully you chose superior, and if you did, you'd be right. The superior court is a little bit different. You do not see that in the federal court system, but you do see it in the North Carolina court system. So again, we're going to start from the bottom, and now we're here up to the top, just like Drake. So we work our way from the bottom to the top of the court system. So we start at the bottom in district court. All right, so let's talk about what type of jurisdiction and who we see if we bust open the doors to a district court right now. Okay, so we've got original jurisdiction, which means they hear a case the first time for misdemeanors. Hopefully you've heard this word before in your life, not applied to you, but just in general, and civil suits less than $10,000. So misdemeanors here are less serious crimes like shoplifting or jaywalking or like simple assault, simple affray, and battery. So like if you are fighting in the street, all right, and you stop fighting as soon as somebody sees you, that's just called a simple affray. If you're like drunk and disorderly, acting a fool, disturbing the peace, that type of thing, that is a less serious crime. People typically do not get physically hurt because of or as a result of misdemeanors, so it's less serious. Also, please notice who is not listed here in the state district court that we have been talking about in almost every other level of court. The jury is not listed here at all because if we're talking about a less serious crime, like you stole some good snacks from Sheetz, you do not need a 12-person jury for multiple days to figure out whether or not you swiped a pack of pretzels from the Sheetz. Okay, the judge is going to go ahead and decide whether you're guilty or innocent and issue a sentence because state courts have more people coming through them than federal courts do. All right, so let's go ahead and make sure we define this in the side of your note sheet. Over in the margin, what's a misdemeanor? You should put less serious crime in here. Less serious crime. All right, additionally, let's hop down underneath there and knock out what is a felony. That is a more serious crime. So a more serious crime. Speaking of more serious crimes, let's hop up here to the superior court level. Okay? So at state superior court, there is what's called original jurisdiction, or OJ, for felonies, not for misdemeanors. This is the serious courtroom for felonies and civil suits, so like child support, or you're getting a divorce, or you're worried about custody, or like somebody's mama moved out of somebody's apartment and stole the washer and dryer on the way out. like Judge Judy, Judge Mathis, Judge Brown type stuff for civil suits. So if it's involving 10 grand or over, you're going to wind up in superior court. So here, if it's a more serious crime like Grand Theft Auto or Murder 1 or armed robbery, stuff like that, it's going to be a jury deciding your guilt or innocence and then a judge issuing the sentence. So we do see a jury here in state superior court. All right, appeals court. This is when, let's say, for example, you got somebody who has been convicted and has been found guilty of a crime. So convicted means that 12 out of the 12 people on the jury found you guilty for your crime. Appeals courts are where you go if you feel as though you have been mistreated and the law has been applied unfairly to you in the meantime. So let's say, for example, we're talking about somebody who's in there for not paying child support and the whole jury is women. You know good and well they're going to be a little bit biased, at least a little bit, against this person. So let's say, for example, that individual, we'll call him Joe Dirt. All right, files.
Any freshman, last name Q through
files and appeal. Okay, so this would be.
Make up a picture.
Oh my gosh,
to the auditorium lobby at this time. Also, any seniors or 11Gs that were not here during first period, so therefore have not gone down to have your picture made, that need to have a retake or makeup, please go. This is for any of the 11Gs or seniors that were not here first period that need to have a picture, and any freshmen, last name Q through Z. Please report to the auditorium lobby. Thank you.
Okay, as I was saying. All right, so we have the state appeals court. So let's say, for example, we got Joe Dirt. He owes back child support, like Young Boy or whoever else. All right, he's got a whole bunch of child support that this man owes, like, let's say, 10 grand. Okay, he owes $10,000 in child support. So he found himself in state superior court. All right, now he has to make sure he pays that child support. Let's say he gets found guilty. All right, they lock him up for 2 months, and when he gets out after the 2 months, he's got to pay all that child support back. He says, you know what, my whole jury was full of women, and so the law was not applied fairly to me. He and his attorney can file an appeal, and the 3-judge panel that he appears before, because when he goes to court the second time, he's not going to see just one judge and a jury in the corner. He's going to see 3 judges, and that's it. No jury, just 3 judges. They can say, yes, the law was applied fairly to you. Go on black to cell block D. You're being annoying. They can deny his appeal and keep his guilty verdict from the lower court or keep his decision from the superior court. Because at this point, he's moved up to appeals. All right, they can say, no, the law was not applied fairly to you, Joe Dirt. They were being biased. You can go home. And instead of having a guilty verdict, he now has one that says not guilty, and he gets to go to the house. Now, they can be like, I mean, they might have been biased, but you didn't pay it, so we're not really sure. They can put a question mark and be like, you know what, we're not really sure. We're going to send you back down to superior court and let you have another crack at it, okay? You can have another shot. All right, so we'll send you back to a lower court, and you get a new jury this time and probably a new judge, okay? So that's what appeals courts does. It's the same exact 3 decisions that the federal court system can make. All right, this is what it looks like when you walk into a federal or a state appeals court. You just see a 3-judge panel. You do not see a jury. It's going to be the defendant and their attorney on the right-hand side and the prosecutor or the people's attorney over here on the left-hand side. This is not about evidence. This is not about witnesses. It's whether or not people followed the rules. Okay, so this is what felonies look like in classes. North Carolina goes, this is a New York one. I couldn't find a North Carolina one in a nice, pretty image. We go all the way to class H. We go all the way A through H in nonviolent felonies. Violent and nonviolent typically have the same amount of years. They're just different types of crimes, and we'll get to that in Unit 7. And then we hop up here to the North Carolina Supreme Court, all right? So it looks a little different than the U.S. Supreme Court, all right? So we know there are 7 total human beings on this court. It's smaller. We want it to be an odd number. I hope you know why, because there's a question coming up. If you put, because we need a tiebreaker, you'd be correct. You do need a tiebreaker. We can't have 3 and 3 and just have no decision. You have to make sure you have a tiebreaker at all times. They have what's called appellate jurisdiction as well. So at this point, instead of seeing 3 judges in front of you, seeing whether or not the law got applied fairly, now you have 7. Okay, they get elected for 8-year terms, just like every other state judge, and they have no term limits, so they can serve those 8 years as many times over as the people will elect them to do so. And they have the final say on all North Carolina Constitution issues. So if somebody questions the constitutional amendment about having the constitutional right to hunt and fish in North Carolina, they have the final say on whether or not that can occur. Right, and this is our current North Carolina State Supreme Court. We are the most diverse state Supreme Court in the country. This man is Jewish. We have 2 African Americans on the court. We have 3 women on the court. So we are the most diverse Supreme Court in the country. Go us. All right, and we will do this Venn diagram later. Congratulations, you have worked your way through the state court system.